Various secret societies and the occult remain a mystery to most and hide secrets that invisibly affect our world today. Has this always been the case? And what mysteries does the Lhasa library hold? Are we sure that the Third Reich completely collapsed and Nazism was indeed defeated? What role did play the Ahnenerbe and the strange man who accompanied Hitler all the time? This strange man was a Tibetan monk whose nickname in the West was the Man in Green Gloves, who in fact was far from being a monk, and not the last in the structure of the occult secret order, the Green Dragon. Ahnenerbe, which means ancestral heritage, is one of the most mysterious organizations of Nazi Germany. The true essence of this SS scientific society has long been obscured by myth. But what is really going on? One of the activities of Ahnenerbe was the study of reincarnation. They tried to find ways of conscious rebirth in order to prolong the lives of Nazi dictators and create an invincible army of the living dead. It turns out that the world is very different from what we see. We don't even realize that there are inhumans who are reborn consciously and repeatedly in order to gain unlimited power over us. These are the questions many people have been asking for years. Let's figure out together what's really going on. To start with, let's take a look at who the reborn's subpersonalities are and what role they play in our world. So, reborns. History knows the facts that speak for themselves. Here are some of them. Case number 1. Hitler. He considered himself the reincarnation of Klingsor, a medieval heretic who practiced satanic rituals, calling spirits and making human sacrifices. According to his contemporaries, Hitler resembled a possessed medium. Those who listened to Hitler suddenly saw the appearance of the leader of glory. At times, it looked as if something was infused into the speaker from outside. There were currents coming from him. Then he became small, mediocre, even vulgar again. He seemed exhausted, as if his batteries became completely empty. Hitler resembled a medium at a seance. It was as if from communicating with spirits his face lit up with unusual inner energy, and the unsightly little man turned into an all-powerful and formidable god in the eyes of the crowd, who knew all the innermost aspirations of the listening people. All who were in front of him at that moment were ready to follow him into fire and into water, to accept death by obeying only a wave of his hand. Case number 2. Heinrich Himmler. He claimed to be the reincarnation of King Henry I, during whose reign the conquest of the Polabian Slavs began and continued under his successors. Military victories over the Slavs and Hungarians greatly strengthened Henry's authority within the kingdom, while his diplomatic success increased his prestige among the rulers of the states neighboring Germany. As a result, during his reign, the German kingdom became one of the most powerful states in Europe. Nazi ideologists relied on symbols of the continuity of imperial power to create their millennial Reich. One manifestation of the Nazi cult of the ancestors was the arrival in 1936 of the top SS leaders in Quedlinburg, to honor the memory of Henry I on the 1000th anniversary of his death, and later performed the ritual of reburial of his remains in the same castle. Case number 3. Karl Maria Viligat. His family belonged to a very ancient clan that possessed occult knowledge and magic. In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church persecuted the clan and anathematized them for heresy and paganism. Viligat inherited occult knowledge and magical abilities from his clan. It can be assumed that he was ruled by a subpersonality. Holding very high positions in the Ananerbi, Viligat was the ideological leader of this organization. Many initiatives undertaken by the Ananerbi were born thanks to his recommendations. Case number 4. Ferenc Speer. The story of one person. Our contemporary, a researcher of the Third Reich, Hans Ulrich von Kranz, describes the story of a man named Ferenc Speer. Here are some excerpts from Ferenc's past life. It was as if I were there myself, in the past. I saw my home in Berlin, my father, my mother. Only other, not my real parents. My wife, 2 daughters. I remembered the name. It turned out to be Ferenc too. Saw how I served in the SS. I started with the stormtroopers, joined the party in the first ranks. Then I joined the SS combat units, was awarded by the Reichsführer, rose to the rank of Sturmbannführer, and died in April 1945 in the street battles in Berlin. Then I began to collect information about other people, those who also felt and remembered something, like me. And I found quite a few such people. I am quite clearly aware of these 2 parts in me, the former SS man and the current journalist. I wondered for a long time who that Sturmbannführer Ferenc was. My father had already died by then. There was no one to ask. And yet I dared to, and once asked my mother if she happened to know any other Ferenc besides me. Of course, I didn't tell her anything that I had recalled about. I didn't want to worry her, and I doubted that she would immediately believe me. She said that one of my father's best friends when he was young was named Ferenc. Apparently, my father had told her about his life in Germany. When she told me that Ferenc was an SS Sturmbannführer who had served with my father and had been killed in the battles for Berlin, I almost fainted. Apparently, that was me. A few years later, something very strange began to happen to me. A part of that Ferenc in me seemed to grow. I now think and most importantly feel completely differently than before. One day it was as if I woke up with it. I believe in it, or rather, that Ferenc believes in it and makes me believe in it. I am having dreams. I am also dreaming about a man. He tells me about honor, justice, truth. He tells me about our just and wonderful ancestors, and most importantly, about our gods. I thought I had made this man up myself in my dreams, until I recognized him. Do you know who it was? Heinrich Himmler. I can feel him calling me. Now something changes in me every day. I don't want to become an SS man or a Nazi. I didn't approve of Hitler and I still don't approve of him, but I know that in a few more years I won't be able to resist it. This is a real story and there are many of them. Isn't it an important topic for research? After all, it is obvious that those dead from the past lives are taking over bodies of the living and dictating their program to them, continuing to implement their dark ideas, plunging each succeeding generation of people into a living hell. Thousands of Nazi criminals managed to escape justice after the end of the World War II, taking advantage of the help of the Vatican. You can find this information in open sources under the name Rat Trails, an organization Spider Network, an organization of former SS officers, Odessa. Magic mediums. How did the Nazi of the Third Reich manage to have such unlimited power and authority? And who was, and still is, behind it all? We found a lot of information about this in open sources. So, case number 5, Magic and the Occult. The magician, Karl Haushofer. At the Nuremberg trials, he was given the role of a martyr, a cabinet scholar who allegedly knew nothing about politics, and therefore should be freed from the responsibility for the atrocities of the Third Reich. In fact, in the dossier found in the safe of Hans Ulrich von Kranz's father, Haushofer had a different, sinister role. He was an initiate in one of the most influential secret Buddhist societies. There is a theory that Haushofer was not only a member of the Thule Society, but also belonged to the Berlin Lodge of the Brothers of Light, sometimes also called the Vril Society. There was a mystical nature of the relationship between him and his disciple Hitler. It was not simply a relationship of disciple and teacher. No, it was a magician-medium relationship, exactly as occult practitioners describe it. In order to spread influence over a more or less significant group of people, a magician needs an intermediary, a medium. And Hitler was that medium. It is the medium who is able to gather a huge amount of energy and then pump the crowd in accordance with the program put into him by the magician. Pump it with hatred, love, aggression, anything. And Hitler had long had a certain ability in this direction. His art of influencing a crowd according to his contemporaries was unsurpassed. Such a medium was an ideal partner for the magician Haushofer. It was in that way that Haushofer made Hitler a national leader. After the crash of Third Reich, during the Nuremberg process, by the way, that time they brought to court only public puppets and put to death those who knew more than it was allowed, but nobody stirred a finger to catch the real leaders and the financiers of the Third Reich. Haushofer finished his life in 1946 as the true member of the Order of the Green Dragon by a ritual self-murder, offering before his family in sacrifice. Secret doctrines of the Third Reich. How could over 1 million people collectively and in one fell swoop become mass murderers? The Allied verdict at the Nuremberg trial did not clarify or explain the source of the SS power that enabled them to make the racial fantasies of the Nazi regime a nightmarish fact of reality. The Thule Society and later the SS Black Sun not only cooperated closely with the Tibetan colony in Berlin, but also with the Tibetan Order of Black Magicians. Hitler was in constant contact with a Tibetan monk in green gloves, who was called a keykeeper. It is believed that he knew the entrance to Agartha, Ariana. On April 25, 1945, when the Russians found 6 dead Tibetans lying in a circle in a Berlin basement, the one with the green gloves was in the center of the circle. They seemed to have committed collective suicide, and later the bodies of more than 1,000 men were found in Berlin, obviously from the Himalayan region, and fighting on the German side. What were Tibetans doing thousands of kilometers away from their country in German uniforms? In his book, Secret Societies and Their Power in the 20th Century, Jan van Helsing writes, according to Franz Bardon, Adolf Hitler was also a member of a Masonic order of the Golden Century, which is actually known as the 99 Lodges. There are 99 of these lodges in many places of the world, all with 99 members. Each lodge is presided by a demon, and each member has his personal demon. The deal is that the demon helps his person gain money and power, but his soul is after death committed to serve the demon. In addition, one member is sacrificed every year to the lodge demon and will be replaced by a new member. The members of the 99 lodges are also industrialists and bankers of the highest caliber, and today are more important than ever. Franz Bardon confirmed that Hitler and the Thule Order were the outer tool of a group of Tibetan magicians. Countless numbers of young men had been trained by the Black Sun during the Third Reich, initiated in Wewelsburg, and sent to Tibet to survive there and to prepare for the great final battle at the end of this century. This letter is from the personal archive of the leader of Ananervi Sievers, which turns out to be kept more than 60 years in Potsdam, and it was discovered quite by accident. I will quote you this document, which is dated November 29, 1942. Herr Reichsführer, I was extremely pleased to learn from another report of our Tibetan division that both Tibetan projects had progressed so far in the past month and had been so successful. We are beginning direct experiments on the transmigration of souls from one body to another. Since we have received the book promised to our representatives during our last visit to Lhasa, I have no doubt that these experiments will be successful, as I have no reason not to trust the reports of our expedition, which saw it with their own eyes. At the end of the experiments as prescribed, I will give you a detailed report on the form. The significance of this discovery for us is immeasurable and equals practically to the discovery of immortality. The transmigration of the souls of the great figures of our era into young, perfect, pure Aryan bodies will enable us to achieve the rebirth of our great nation. And the body from which the soul is transferred to another one must necessarily be burned or torn into pieces, so that the soul will not be tempted to find it and return. The transmigration of the souls of fallen soldiers and officers loyal to the nation and the Führer will enable us to root out many weaknesses, insecurity and vice in our soldiers, and make the Reich's army truly invincible and indestructible. Such an eternal life will be the highest reward which they will strive for, more persistently and fiercely than for prosperity and peace. The preferred way of transmigrating souls is to substitute the soul and consciousness of a child at the moment of birth, or immediately thereafter. In this case, the development of the body takes place normally until a certain age, when the transmigrated soul begins to prevail over the original one. Memories and awareness of the past life come. With proper guidance, such a process is painless and effective. In this way, we will be able to raise children with Aryan blood all over the world. In the future, we can call them into the service for the Reich, as it is the sacred duty of every person in whom Aryan blood flows The only problem is that the soul of the deceased should be placed in the right vault and then by all means transferred personally to a new body. A vault may be any object appropriately charged during magical practices. In this connection, thank you for your personal participation in the Lebensborn program. Thank you also for recommending to forward this information, in part, to the department working on the development of the national church concept. This discovery should certainly be incorporated there as the highest reward that can be granted for a worthy life, faithful to the new religious dogmas, loyal to Germany and the Führer. Devoted to you, Sievers. The Lebensborn program was not just a huge nursery for breeding racially pure children by selection method. The Lebensborn was preparing human raw materials, pure, young bodies with Aryan blood. In them, according to the plan of Himmler and his cronies, with the help of magical practices that they learned about in Tibet, the souls of the Nazis could move in, especially those ones who wanted eternal life, but were not true Aryans. These were to be the new Aryans, the people who were to rule the world. This is how the army of the Fourth Reich, an army of the dead, was formed. We know from history that in 1995, near Sevastopol, there was discovered an entire German military cemetery where all the dead had a triangular hole in their foreheads, as a way of activating the pineal gland to obtain superpowers, the gift of foresight. The SS Vatican. Wewelsburg Castle, also known as the SS Vatican, is shrouded in legend and mystery and is located in Germany in North Rhine, Westphalia. Nearby is the megalithic building Externstein. Many historians suppose that the outline of the castle resembles the Grail cup into which the spear of destiny is plunged. For the SS, it was a sacred place. During the Third Reich, the castle was the forge of the SS cadres and the center of the annual meetings of the top ranks, as well as the headquarters of the Black Order of the SS. It's an odd phrase, the SS Vatican, isn't it? The etymology of the word Vatican is a real mystery. According to one version, Vaticanus, from Latin, is an ancient Roman pagan god of the first cry of a newborn child. According to another, the Latin word Vaticanor means to foretell, to prophesy. According to a third version, Vaticinor corresponds to the name of the Etruscan goddess of the underworld, Vatica, who stands between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Having carefully studied all the details, Himmler decided to choose the castle of Wewelsburg. There he intended to establish a center of the Nazi new religion that was being created in the bowels of the SS. According to the findings of the Ahnenerbe experts, the castle was located at the intersection of several strong energy lines. This meant that the Earth's energy was concentrated in its foundation in the shape of a triangle and could be used at any time during magical rituals for the purpose that the magician intended. The centerpiece of the SS Vatican was to be the northern tower of the castle, triangle, aimed at the mythical island of Thule in the Arctic. The lower hall named Valhalla, in honor of the place where the Scandinavian gods and heroes feasted, with an eternal fire in the middle and a crypt tomb was built in it. This floor of the tower was Niflheim, the world of the dead, from the ancient sagas. This is where the deceased Obergruppenführers and the rings of all members of the Black Order were to rest, after their masters had passed into the other world. In the middle of the hall there was a recess, under which the shrine of the Order was located. The shrine was located in the deep and dark dungeons of the castle, and many occult rituals were performed there, such as blood baptisms for neophytes, offerings to pagan gods, numerous blood fasts, and other dark events. The burning of the dead SS members and their emblems also took place here. Through special ventilation shafts, the smoke about the castle was kept strictly in the shape of a huge pillar. Their ashes were then deposited in one of 12 funerary urns, which were placed on 12 special pedestals. And on the floor above, the 12-column Midgard, the world of the living, was erected. Daily ceremonies were held in the middle hall. Influenced by the mystical tales of King Arthur, Himmler also decided to have a round table of 12 selected Obergruppenführers, Knights of the Black Order, who were to decide the fate of mankind. The Grail Hall was to crown the Northern Tower, at the same time symbolizing Asgard, the ancient Germanic world of the gods. But they did not succeed in realizing their plan. In 1945, all the valuables of Wewelsburg were evacuated, and the castle itself was blown up on the orders of Himmler. But most of the rooms, including Valhalla and the Hall of the Knights of the Round Table, are still preserved. The black sun, woven from the 12 runes of victory, the symbol of the Nazis' new order, is still on the floor. It was here that the Nazis received their initiations and performed their rituals. Although the castle was blown up, the interior has survived and is now silently awaiting its masters. Nazism today. Today, the Nazis, acting all over the world, are preparing the new 1933, taking over the leading positions in the economy, advancing in the political sphere. They have the treasures of the Antarctic Reich at their disposal, billions of dollars in Swiss bank accounts, perhaps even help from an unknown civilization of the Antarctic and other even darker and more terrifying forces. How could this happen and why do we accept it? Who or what is really behind it? There are right-wing radical movements in every country right now. In many countries, for example, they are very close to winning elections. And on a global scale, a Nazi victory should not be admitted under any circumstances. What has happened to us? Why has violence become a way of life almost everywhere in the world? Why is humanity now out of fashion? It seems like people are artificially forced to hate each other and want to die. All the dark forces always fight against humanity all the times, and we help them with our ignorance. Let's take a look at the facts. United States, 19 years after the war, former Nazis already held key government posts, namely 20 members in the US government, 189 generals and officers in NATO, as well as 1,118 prosecutors, 244 executives, and 300 police officers. There are currently 939 extremist groups operating in the United States, including neo-Nazi groups. According to an FBI report, between October 2001 and May 2008, about 200 military veterans returning from hot spots joined such organizations as the Ku Klux Klan, the Aryan Nations, the National Socialist Movement, and others. What kind of world do we live in? Wars, violence, destruction, crisis, double or triple standards. People live in a constant race and struggle to survive. And you still don't believe that the dead rule this world. Evil is always well organized. Its adepts are constantly learning and mastering their skills, creating hellish conditions of existence for the rest of us. They take advantage of our ignorance. But what about a human being? Why do we mindlessly get caught in what is presented to us like a flock of sheep, taking everything for granted and beyond our control? With our loss of desires, we are too busy to find out the essence of what's going on. The Third Reich was and still is one of the worst and most brutal dictatorships of the dead in the human history. The dead do not need the victory of one leader or the other. They need the war to go on and on. Human pain and suffering is their food. They have a vested interest in seeing wars continue indefinitely. That is why history cannot be falsified. And the danger of the Hitler clique and its followers cannot be underestimated. And it is even more impossible to keep silent about those secret dark forces that were behind the Nazis. After all, it is clear that they exist and operate to this day, although they have not been fully explored. And official science does not take them seriously. Could this be done on purpose? Knowing the truth about the past, we are able to understand what is happening and foresee what is to come.